This is the place for boomers, Boomer Being, with your host, Leslie Noymer.
Welcome, I'm Leslie Noymer with WATD-FM. Today's topic, America the Blessed Land, boomers living in a Trump presidency. Today's focus, Democratic women activists, featuring Amy Riemer, owner of Riemer Communications, a public relations firm, and a member of a group called the Persisterhood 9. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, and thank you, Leslie, for having me on.
Wonderful. So tell us, how and why was the group formed?
Well, we are a group of passionate women, I will say. We were all slightly disappointed on November 8th when Donald Trump became our 45th president. And in the weeks following that, we learned about the Women's March in Boston taking place on January 21st, right after the inauguration. And we felt that this was something for us to, quote unquote, do something. So the 9 of us went to Boston, and we were amazed. We were amazed by the turnout, by the passion, not just in Boston, but throughout the world. About the desire to move forward, but also to gather and talk about the distrust of this new administration. And then on the way home, we decided that perhaps we should talk regularly and meet regularly, which we have done. We've sent postcards to the White House. We've been involved in calling campaigns to our congressmen, and not many of us have been politically active before, but this really has sparked a chord in us, and we really feel as if we're trying to do something to get the word out.
It must have been incredible being down in Boston on that day.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was really, when we first arrived there, it was, we couldn't believe how many people were there. And then, as the day went on and the sun started to shine, we saw helicopters in the sky. We were like, what is going on? And it wasn't until we, of course, got home and started to, see on Facebook and on the news that this was happening all over the world, not just in the country or in Boston, but really all over the world. And it made us feel as if there's really something to stand together for.
Interesting. So what are the most pressing issues for you at this time?
Well, like I said, we are just working women who want to focus on our own lives, but we feel as if every day we sort of wake up and there's just so much in the news. And this new administration and under President Trump, it's creating such an anxious world and anxious citizens. And in our group, we have one woman is a first-generation immigrant, and she tells a story about how when she first came over from Uganda to the United States and on July 4th of 1971, she saw fireworks in the sky, and she thought that this is the way America welcomes immigrants. Oh. And, with what's happening today, it's breaking all of our hearts. And, for so many years, this country was a place that welcomed everyone. And now, whether you're documented or undocumented or an immigrant, people are feeling scared and unwelcome. While all of that makes us sad, what's going on, and we're all trying to help, and there are wonderful organizations out there, what's actually making us scared is the attack on the press. We are, to call the press enemy of the people is terrifying. The reason for the free press is to have power in check. And when the president tries to muzzle the press or call stories failing, like, the New York Times is producing fake news and tweaking his own fake news, it's very scary.
Well, for you in particular, being a public relations professional, has it impacted you personally?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm involved with an organization called the Public Relations Society of America, and we can't understand. I mean, we went to school, as journalists went to school, to understand how to really identify what is the real news and report on that. And journalism was always a sacred profession. People really went out of their way to be able to provide information to people. And so I think that that's really pretty scary. Other things that he's talking about, gutting the EPA, the Department of Education, having conversations about rolling back women's rights. I mean, these are all things that are just not acceptable to who, we are. And we totally understand. We have friends across the aisle who voted Republican. And, we all do understand that there maybe was time for a change politically, financially, and to put a Republican in office is totally fine. But this Republican presidency has really divided friends and families and conversations, and that's really unfortunate.
Have you found that it impacts your friendships?
I try not to. I think, of course, we've all defriended few people on Facebook who, during the election predominantly, were saying things that just were not right. I never try and post things that are so negative. I just want the news to get out there, or the feeling and sentiment as to what's going on. But I think most people that I know who did vote for President Trump are also feeling disappointed, because they're seeing that, while maybe financially they're benefiting from an increased stock market, maybe some of the things he's trying to put into place are not really all that welcoming.
So what advice do you have for those listeners that are now inspired to get involved, Amy?
I think talking with like-minded people like this and finding out the facts is absolutely number one. Some things that people can do. We just learned that Facebook has rolled out a nonpartisan civic engagement service called U.S. Town Hall. It gives people an online community to talk. People can send daily text messages to elected officials. That text daily is 228466. If anybody really wants to follow that. Jen Hoffman provides a weekly action items as to how people can get involved. The March for Science is on April 29th. The March for Climate Change is on April 22nd. Actually, I have those reversed, sorry. But there's websites where people can sign up and get involved. And I have to tell you, being part of a march like that is so empowering, and you really do feel as if you're making a difference. Staying with the EPA, call Scott Pruitt's main line. People answer the phone. Tell him, why he should be acknowledging climate change. There are organizations out there like Mothers Out Front or Swing Left. These are things that people can find online that might sit with them. And we're also supporting the International Institute of New England, which helps refugees and immigrants. And we think that's really important as well.
Thank you for those wonderful reference points.
Yeah, they're great.
President Trump has been in office for only 9 weeks. What is your outlook on where we are today and where we can go from here?
It's so interesting. I mentioned to somebody who voted for President Trump that he's been in office for 9 weeks. And I think their thought is that he's only been in office for 9 weeks. Give him a chance. We are in the infancy of his presidency. For those of us who are very concerned about his agenda, we look at the negativity, the divisiveness, and we think, oh my goodness, it's only been 9 weeks. Where is this going? Where is this going? We've lost our leadership. We lost empathy for those who are less fortunate. We've lost our passion and the importance of arts in our society. We've lost intellectual reasoning. I mean, there's certain things that we've lost over the past 9 weeks, and I do hope, of course, that we can create some sort of sense of calm and move forward.
Well, I think you have a good, open-minded attitude.
Well, that you have to. We are the United States of America, and at the end of the day, we really need to get back to unifying our country and not dividing us.
Well, I like your hopefulness. So, let's get back to the other side. What worries you today when you listen to the news?
Well, I think that the total disregard for truth and facts. As I said, I'm in the world of communications. I watch Sean Spicer, and he tries to deliver a message. And at the end of the day, I feel as if this administration is really throwing up distractions when they're not focusing on the real issues. While we're all distracted as to what's going on with Russia and the connections with Russia, they're signing bills about dismantling the Paris Accord. There's so many important things that are going on, and yet we are not. We're being distracted. There are outlandish statements out there about the Obama wiretapping, about visits to Mar-a-Lago and how much that's costing us as taxpayers, about Ivanka Trump's clothing line being dropped from Nordstrom's. These are things that we should not have to worry ourselves about. And while all this is going on, Trump has actually introduced to Congress 2,000 bills, new bills, and some of them are really important. Some of them including terminating the Environmental Protection Agency by December of 2018. And he already started with this week's signing of undoing everything that President Obama did in relation to climate change. Vouchers for public education. This is totally going to change how federal government spends money on education. Education's our number one future. That's what builds us. terminating the Department of Education, and Betsy DeVos has come out publicly and said she would be fine to be out of a job. This is the leader of one of our major departments, and it's very concerning. Repealing the rule to protect wildlife. The rule right now states that you cannot kill certain wildlife for sport, only for necessity, and they want to repeal that. I mean, the use of guns, on wildlife or on human beings is a whole issue that I don't even think we will have time to address.
No, we definitely don't have time.
Yes. Defunding Planned Parenthood. No federal funds for Planned Parenthood unless they prove that none of that money will go towards abortions. Right now, actually, federal funds prohibit the use of the money for abortion. So I'm not really quite sure why they're looking to defund that. The national right to work. It weakens labor unions by requiring workers to join unions. Mobilizing against sanctuary cities, of which Boston is one, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, that is saying that they'll strip federal funding from those states who are known as sanctuary cities. Criminal penalties for anyone who performs an abortion, going back to women's rights. And the proposed budget of $54 billion to increase defense spending. While, of course, the military is so important, we're gutting so many important things. For instance, starvation in South Sudan. There's money for that and for the arts. And this is what's really going on in our country. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that aren't being talked about while we're following these distractions of what's being tweeted the most recently.
Well, and when I hear you read the top 8 significant bills of interest to you, it makes me feel like I need to educate myself more. And hopefully our listeners will be motivated to just get out there and read and, find out what's important to you and learn more about what's really going on.
It's so interesting, and absolutely. I find myself wanting to find the facts on all of these things as I read them. And I've never really been that involved politically, but I feel as if so much of this is so important to the future of our country. We all have children, and what are we going to be leaving them if we start to strip all these things away?
I understand. Well, that brings me to my next question. I'd like to hear you talk about something positive Trump has done, because you seem fair and open-minded, even though you're partisan. Let's hear something positive.
Well, we gave this some hard thought. It was very important for us to talk about this, and I do think I really do think his nomination for the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch, is going to be a fine pick. I think that he's identified somebody who's intelligent and really is a strong personality. And at the end of the day, he has said that no man is above the law. So I don't fear that Neil Gorsuch, if he gets confirmed, that he's actually going to be, somebody who's going to just listen to the president. He has an important job to do, and he understands that. President Trump has talked about reducing prices of medicine, which is, of course, such a concern to all of us. I read news stories about medicines costing $35,000, $60,000 a year. Who could afford those things? So if he could pass a proper health care bill where medicine can be, the cost of medicine can be taken down, that's fantastic. He's met with industry leaders. I think part of the listening campaign is really important. People in healthcare, people in technology, religious group, ethnic groups. I've seen pictures of him. What he's doing with that information is yet to be seen, but I think it's wonderful that he is at least reaching to those different groups. And I think for me personally, he created this movement that we are now a part of. Intelligent, passionate, empowered people are becoming involved politically. And we gather, we discuss, we find facts, and we're trying to keep educated. And our group, the Persisterhood 9, is a wonderful group of women who really do talk about the issues, and we're trying to get things done.
Well, it sounds like you're approaching your feelings in the appropriate way. Like you said, you're listening, you're very involved, you're watching the news and reading and keeping educated so that, you're not listening and saying, oh, this is fake news. You really want to educate yourself.
Right. And I think it is so important, this whole issue of fake news, that people really do understand that they need to find their facts from a source. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, even CNN, Fox News. These people are paid professionals to give us the facts. There are trollers out there in the internet and that actually do provide fake news, and you need to understand where that news is coming from.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned the Republican health care bill and the American Health Care Act. In your opinion, there's been a lot of things happening in the last 2 weeks, obviously. Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I think I listened to people say, no one, not even President Obama himself, said that the Affordable Care Act was perfect. He instituted this plan, and that needed, of course, to be improved. Everything is an evolution, and so I do think that it is so important to have some sort of insurance. And now 24 million people are being insured. I have a relative who was actually diagnosed, unfortunately, with breast cancer, and her husband at the same time needed lung surgery. They both were able to have those surgeries because they are part of the Affordable Care Act. They ended up getting the bills. They were $140,000 for those two surgeries. They would have had to claim bankruptcy if they didn't have insurance. So I think what Republicans need to understand is that it's important for people to have insurance. Is Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act perfect? No. Is it somewhere to start? Yes. I even heard during the debates one of the Republican senators saying, let's take our time. This isn't something that had to be done in the first 9 weeks. Let's take our time. Let's improve upon what we already have.
A lot to digest, especially when you hear $145,000. That's make or break a family.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
not chump change.
No. And to think that people, you have major surgery, you can't go to work. Some people get paid hourly. Some people aren't even getting benefits when they're missing work. So it's a very complicated, as Mr. Trump has said, complicated issue.
Yes, it certainly is. So let's switch gears for a minute and talk to our listeners about Donald Trump and potential conflicts of interest.
It seems to be never ending. Even this morning, I read in the paper that Kushner and Company, which is Jared Kushner's family's company, had to drop their talks with the Chinese investment company because of this very issue, because they were going to be making money. There are so many conflicts of interest. I was driving back the other day from Long Island to Boston and drove right past a new golf course called Trump Links. And it's a new golf course that Donald Trump owns. So I don't understand how a president can not be benefiting from the family name while his family is continuing to see profit from the company. So I think people need to get down to the bottom of what's really going on.
Yeah, I mean, presumably the sons are running, the businesses, but we really don't know.
Right. And I think eventually, if he is out of office one day, he'll be benefiting from all of that. So it's a little disheartening.
There's been a great deal of coverage in the media regarding Trump's possible connections to Russia and Putin. Recently, there was a bombshell revelation by FBI Director Comey confirming that his agency was investigating whether members of President Trump's campaign colluded with Russia to influence the election. Talk about the Russia connection in the context of this administration and possible corruption.
Well, I seem to think that when there's smoke, there's fire. And the Jared Kushner story that just came out this week about him personally having direct conversations with people in Russia makes you pause to think. And during the election, the fact that Russia could have been involved in our political process seemed really hard to comprehend as we were sitting there watching the news. But as we started to hear more and more about these connections from Trump colleagues and his prodding of asking Russia to release Hillary Clinton's emails, it no longer seems like it's a really far-fetched story. And somehow they must have been involved. And I am happy to see that the FBI is investigating this matter. And the fact that Trump was tweeting misleading and inaccurate information while Comey was testifying and being investigated was also, again, part of this whole distraction. And I actually heard one newscaster say that Comey giveth and Comey taketh away. So it will be all very important. I mean, Comey was the one who actually said that Hillary Clinton was under investigation just weeks before. And now that Trump is in power, he's now doing the same in a way.
Weeks after.
Yes.
The president does not believe that humans are, in a large part, responsible for climate change. Tell us how you view the Trump administration's position on climate change.
Well, as we talked about before, he wants to eliminate the EPA. And whether we agree on the reasons or not, we have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink because of the EPA. I mean, look at New York City, look at Cleveland, look at the Charles River right in our backyard, look at Shanghai. I mean, since the 70s when the EPA was formed, we now have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. And yesterday, when that bill was signed and the coal miners were standing around, I did hear that one of the coal miners said afterwards, this is not going to be the end all, because really the world has changed. Our future's in renewables. We're creating jobs in that. And to spend time and energy and passion and commitment that we had to the international world to say that we're on your side, we want to do what is best for the world, and in one swipe of a pen to eliminate all that is very disheartening.
I understand. Okay. How do you view Trump's plans to build a wall between the United States and Mexico, and how the wall impacts international relations? I'd like it if you could speak to that.
Well, it's really hard to read the headlines. In fact, I read this morning that over 200 companies, some actually with Hispanic leaders, have already put in bids to build the wall. Now, the original plan was for $21 billion to build a wall between the entire border. Now I believe it's down to $1 billion and to cover 62 miles, or the first 62 miles. Any wall, to me, is divisive. And I think at the beginning, he's saying Mexico's going to pay for this wall. Now, all of a sudden, that $1 billion is in our tax dollars. So we're paying for this wall that I personally, and I know our group and many, many people around the country, don't even believe in. And the relationship that we have now with Mexico is just one example of the damage that we've already done internationally. The president last week meeting with Angela Merkel and snubbing her by not shaking her hand, or blaming the UK for false claims about wiretapping. It's embarrassing to us as American citizens.
Will you summarize today by sharing with us more about how you're feeling as a citizen, as a member of the Persisterhood 9, particularly how those feelings tie into the national movement against our president?
Yeah. I guess I wish we weren't here. I just saw Hamilton a couple of weeks ago, and I was given a glimpse into really what our country was founded upon. And it saddens me to think that this administration is looking to take away what the United States stands for: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these are just three of our unalienable rights. And what it says is that, the government is supposed to protect us from those rights. And often we feel very much, especially the immigrants who are here, we're all immigrants. My grandparents came over. We have friends that are first-generation immigrants, and we have friends that have just moved here from other countries. And I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole, and we're being portrayed in the rest of the world that we're not interested in being part of the global world, which I think over the past decade or so has become so important. I mean, we have children who are graduating college and starting to work, and they have the freedom to go and work in other parts of the world, which is wonderful, in Asia or in Europe or in Latin America. And I think that our country is great because of the opportunity and the civility and respect. And I feel like so much of that is being debated and argued right now. And our group is just, one of very many around the country who are just trying to find out the truth. And we all want what's best for the country. And in a way, we hope that President Trump can listen to the other side, to be intelligent about his decisions, and to bring us all together and to keep America great.
Well, I really appreciate the spirit with which you approach this. And we thank you for joining us, and it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And next month, be sure to tune in when I'll host a guest from the other side of the aisle. Thanks for joining us on the Boomer Being Show. See you next time.
This has been Boomer Being on WATD. WATD. WATD.